Hi, friends, and welcome to Good Enough 444. I'm Emily, and this is a space where we talk about healing, growth, and the messy, beautiful process of learning to believe that we are already enough, just as we are. I share my own story of growing up in a polygamous cult, navigating family, faith, and freedom. And I connect it to the stories we see played out on TLC's Sister Wives. These conversations aren't just about a TV show, they're about real people, real struggles, and the power of doing our own personal healing work. So, whether you are here because you are curious, because you've walked a similar path, or because you are looking for a reminder that you are not alone, you are in the right place. So, let's dive in. All right, guys, we are going to cover chapter 6 and 7 of Christine's book, Sister Wife. And in the last chapter, her and Cody had just gotten married and gone on their honeymoon, Craig. So, chapter 6 is called Associated Them with Pain. And she's talking about this starts out at that sister wives aren't supposed to have special privileges by their order of marriage. So, there is this whole myth that the first wife is the boss wife, the prioritized wife. She's the one that gets all of the perks and the benefits. And I think honestly, there's almost nothing you can do about that first wife status. The first wife, of course, is going to have the easiest wedding. She can have a big dress and a big cake and, invite all of her friends, and she's in love with her husband. And there's not anybody else to worry about. Generally, there's not anybody else to worry about offending. So I think that it is just a little bit easier for the first wife in that regard. They're already an established couple. They dated as monogamous. She talks about how Mary and Cody could openly kiss, laugh, and snuggle. Mary could even get crazy and wear a tight sweater when it was just the two of them. So she said that she had no doubt that in those early days that they were in love. He looked at her like he adored her, and that is what I've heard from everybody. She even says that we all saw them as the perfect couple. And, if you listen to Melanie and Corey, Melanie knew Mary and Cody really well at that time, and she's always said that Cody was really in love with Mary, and they were the couple goals, of that time. So I think Christine gives Mary a lot of grace in this book, especially in light of the fact that she basically says now in her interviews that her and Mary don't need to be friends, that there's, really no reason for them to be friends, that Mary's not a safe person for Christine, and their relationship is basically over. She talks about in the book that they all wrote together, becoming sister wives. She talks about how Janelle would sit in a chair in the living room while Mary and Cody sat together on the couch, hands under the blanket, and how Janelle felt like she was an imposter. And then, about a year after Janelle married Cody, so Mary and Cody have been married for 4 years now. Janelle and Cody have been married for a year. She shows up, moves into the 3-bedroom trailer with them in Wyoming, and she says that would never end well. So when she married Cody, she believed that Mary and Janelle would be settled in. So I would simply have 2 new women in my life and we would all support each other. I definitely think that Christine went into this with rose-colored glasses, and she very much just expected things to be smooth and fun and easy, and she was going to get to know them and they were going to love her and they were all going to just have a really cohesive relationship. So she says that Janelle worked for the state government and Mary worked at an engraving shop. And so in her mind, those two were basically going to be like roommates for her. And Cody traveled most of the time selling religious products. And then they didn't have any children yet. So she also didn't know that Janelle and Mary didn't get along. She didn't know that when she married Cody. So when she talks about at the day of her and Cody's wedding, how nobody was in a good mood. Janelle and Mary didn't really have any excitement or happiness. That could have obviously been Mary and Janelle having their own issue that had absolutely nothing to do with Christine. So maybe they brought that into the situation. So she says, almost immediately, I felt like the middle woman between them, trying to keep the peace and bouncing around. She says that's probably how Cody felt too, like a ping pong ball, just bouncing in between all of them, trying to figure out how to be married to 3 women. I cannot even fathom for a second how Cody's 25 and he has 3 young wives and they're all trying to figure out their relationships with each other and they're trying to figure out their relationship with him. I just can't even imagine, especially if any of them have a strong personality. Mary and Cody are completely in love with each other. And now, out of necessity, essentially, right? This is the way that they're supposed to live. He takes 2 more wives that he's supposed to absolutely be in love with. And now the 4 of them have to really figure out how to be cohesive with each other. Well, I know that with my dad's first wife, she wanted to have the first baby. And then she wanted that baby to be a boy. Then she wanted to have the second baby, and she wanted that baby to be a girl. When I very first met her, I mean, I knew her when I was a kid. I didn't know her because she had already been divorced from my dad for quite a while. I went to Lake Powell with Melanie and her first husband, and my dad's first wife was on that trip. So we sat down and talked, and I was fascinated with just how kind she was and how laid back she was. And she straight up said, I went into it with blinders on, and I realized rather quickly that it wasn't for me. And so she said, there wasn't anything that your mom did. There wasn't anything that your dad did necessarily that was wrong. I was really jealous. And this just I just knew that this wasn't the life for me. And so she got out of it within, I think, probably 4 years of marrying my dad, maybe 3. It was really quick. Long enough that she had a son and then a daughter, and then my mom had Melanie. So I think there was a lot of jealousy. I think that Mary was probably really jealous of Janelle. And then here comes Christine. She's really jealous of Christine. Mary and Janelle are already fighting the way that they are. And so Cody's trying to navigate that. My opinion is he married Christine for status and as like a ticket wife, wife number 3, that gets Cody the ability to be on to make it to the celestial kingdom. That's just a really big start. I don't know very many people that just straight out the gate have 3 wives like that. So she said she thinks that both Mary and Janelle hoped that she could relieve some of the pressure that they felt between the 2 of them. And Christine says that she also thinks that she added equilibrium to their situation. So She says they were young and a lot of it was just nonsense. So it wasn't hard to choose to be positive it wasn't hard to choose to be positive, to keep trying to add fun. But then she says Mary was just so judgmental of everything that Janelle did. Why does it matter what kind of pancakes she likes? Who cares? So it sounds like Mary made a big deal about a lot of things that were just so inconsequential. She said Janelle was really independent, so she would just disappear a lot. She'd get tired of it and she would just disappear. But she said she thought that Janelle could be controlling too. She said some of it in the beginning was just personality. Some of it was their situation. You've got 3 wives living in one trailer. Holy shit, I can't even imagine that. Then she says some of it was just youth. So she said that in the beginning, she got along better with Mary, that they had a lot more in common. They did a lot of things out of necessity. So they did a lot of like gardening because they didn't have a lot of money. So they did a lot of canned food together. And she would help with whatever projects Janelle took on. So she says, don't get me wrong, Janelle is lovely and easy to get along with. She's the nicest out of all of us. She's truly kind. And then she goes on to say that Cody and Mary fought all the time. And I can totally see that being the case. Again, here comes these 2 women. She's jealous of both of them. So she can't get pregnant. Then Janelle gets pregnant. Then Christine gets pregnant. And basically these women just came in and like stole her life. But I think that Cody probably loved Mary the most, but obviously is maintaining these relationships with these other women. And so she said that it was just really volcanic. She says that she thinks that they were in love, but that things were just really rocky, that she got mad about everything. Cody loved how Mary managed things, from keeping the house to raising the children. And so she felt like that gave Mary more clout in the day-to-day running of the household. But she said that they always fought. Jealousy was tough for all of us. Just harder for Mary, I guess. So she said while she could manage her relationships with Mary and Janelle, she said she felt like she didn't know Cody at all. Okay, so this is the part where this chapter really gets interesting for me because, like I said in my last video, Cody, and they say that there's really such a small number of people that actually have narcissistic personality disorder. Like statistically, it's really small. Maybe Cody doesn't have it. Maybe he does. Chances are Cody probably has borderline personality disorder. And something I need to clear up too, that I said in my last video, I kind of overlapped my words. I was feeling a little bit nervous about the subject because it's actually a really personal subject for me. I said in there that people with bipolar are part of that cluster B personality disorder, and that's not the case. Bipolar is not a cluster B personality disorder. It's a mood disorder. Dissociative identity disorder, those are mood disorders. So cluster B personality disorders and mood disorders can overlap each other. They're not in the same category. So somebody that has bipolar disorder could also have borderline personality disorder, and that would mean they have a personality disorder and a mood disorder. So they're not the same thing. I should have had a little bit more research on that before I spoke about it. The reason that I'm saying that, though, is she said she could manage her relationships with Mary and Janelle, but she felt like she didn't know Cody at all. She missed the fun-loving friend. So she has this 3-year relationship with Cody where they have a ton of fun together. He's really funny. She looks up to him, thinks that he's really independent thinker, all of those things. And then she says that his seriousness shocked me. I started to notice a major personality change. So, for the first few years of hanging out with him, I believed he was an independent thinker. After we got married, I was stunned to see how much he relied on other people's opinions. So, that is what leads me to believe that he is more likely to have borderline personality disorder with narcissistic tendencies. And I think, from my opinion, that is something that is really common with a lot of these polygamous men. For sure, I would guess, and again, my opinion, I think that my dad very much has borderline personality disorder with very, very strong narcissistic tendencies. And I think Cody does too. And so people, when they have borderline personality disorder, they lie a lot. And a lot of these men, they pit the wives against each other and they take on the opinion or the personality of whatever wife is their favorite at the time. I watched that my whole entire life with my dad. And with all of my dad's wives, all of the ones that I grew up with anyways, I always knew exactly what wife he was talking to by the way he spoke to them on the phone. So he had an auto body shop and a towing company, and he had his towing company on all of the police rotations, not all of them, but a big chunk of them. And so he would tow car crashes and DUIs and things like that. And then if there was an accident, then he would try to sell the people to use his auto body shop. And that was how he made money. So I have watched my dad lie and lie and lie and lie and lie and lie and lie some more. He just has always been a liar. And again, I have learned a lot about these personality disorders. And the majority of the time, when you get into these dynamics, you usually end up with a man that has a cluster B personality disorder and then a wife or two that have codependency. And even the man will have codependency. I think Cody is very codependent. I know my dad was extremely codependent. So you get these men that are super codependent, these women that are super codependent, and it makes sense, right? Because we were taught what to believe our whole lives. We weren't really allowed to be independent thinkers. And she thought that Cody was an independent thinker. And yet she marries him and she finds out that he relies heavily on other people's opinion of him. And he isn't fun anymore, right? Like she's part of the dynamic that probably pulls on him and requires of him. And so instead of being like this prize to be won, now she becomes a burden to him. One more person to take care of, one more person to entertain, one more person that needs or wants something from him. So she says, that when she thought about our future, she just thought that it would be fun. Like they'd all have a good time together because she likes to have fun. She said, we didn't have enough money. He fought with Mary. Mary and Janelle fought with each other. And Cody had to appear to outsiders as a monogamist. So this is back when there was usually one wife that was a public wife, and I didn't know this as a child until a little bit later in my childhood. I didn't know that that was a thing. Anytime I had gone out in public with my dad, he was my dad. So I do remember at one point going to his office when I was younger, and I remember my mom telling me, if you address your dad, you need to call him David. And if you address your grandma, you need to call her name. And I was like, Yeah, no, thanks. If I address my dad, I'm gonna call him dad. And if I talk to grandma, I'm gonna call her grandma. I think I was probably 8 to 10 years old at that point. I don't know for sure. So she said that Cody remained really distant from her. And then he did every, third night rotation. So he would stay with Mary one night and then he would stay with Janelle one night and then he would stay with her. And she just said that she didn't feel as if they grew any closer together. She said that she knew how close he could be with Mary and she knew how close he could be with Janelle because their walls were paper thin. I think it's tragic and really sad to think that he is in this trailer. I mean, think about it. Like a trailer. How many square feet are trailers? Like 800 square feet. And he's got three wives in a 3-bedroom trailer. It's just so crazy. So she says that the walls were paper thin. It's one thing to know your roommate is having sex in the next bedroom over. It's another when it's your husband and you can hear everything. I cannot even imagine. There is one story about one of my aunts. She was always the really bossy wife, the really dominant in charge wife. And there has been a story told throughout my family about her going in and grabbing her sister wife by the hair and ripping her off of her husband and dragging her out in the hallway and the two of them physically fighting. Like she went in and interrupted their schmexual time and beat the crap out of her because she was so jealous that she could hear them in the other room doing what husbands and wives do. So that is so ridiculous and so incredibly hard. I don't know how they think that you should push down every internal instinct, that you're supposed to dampen who you are as a person. Most of these women don't even get to really have the personality that they have. They're just required to be a certain way, act a certain way, feel a certain way, say things a certain way. She said that it shocked her how much it hurt her to hear those things. And she said, especially when they had an actual relationship where they talked and played and enjoyed each other physically. She said they were all very careful not to demonstrate affection in front of the other sister wives. There was no hand holding or terms of endearment, but at night she could hear the affection. And so I think that's so sad. I always thought that was weird if I ever did watch episodes of Sister Wives. I remember my dad, I don't remember him necessarily being overly affectionate with one wife or another. I remember that I always thought it was so gross that he could kiss each one of them. Like we would be at a family event and he would at times hug them or kiss them or whatever. It wasn't that just wasn't ever a thing, that they didn't have that affection between each other. And so then she gets into the polygamy PJs. So now she's talking about their garments. And I don't know a lot about garments. I didn't get married in the AUB in that religious setting. I didn't go through the endowment house. I didn't ever have garments. So that's definitely not a topic that I know or understand. I've seen them my whole life. My mom wore them every single day. She still does. My dad wore them. So there were times, obviously, that I saw my parents in theirs. I just always was taught that they're holy and special, and it's something that you get when you go through their endowment house. And so the garments have specifically been blessed. They're considered sacred. It's some part of covenants that they make, and it's part of their, initiation process. Like when you join into the cult, you get garments as your prize, which sounds like a terrible prize. Really bad idea. But she said they were supposed to wear them all the time. Yeah, even then she says sometimes her and Cody wore them during Schmecks, and sometimes she said it felt like it wasn't for religious reasons. So, according to the church, they were supposed to wear them under wetsuits when they swam, even if they were at a public pool, which she said nobody ever did. And then she said sometimes Cody wanted her to wear them and sometimes he wanted her to wear lingerie. She said that never felt like he wanted it for the schmexy reasons. He wanted it so that he didn't have to see her, that they wouldn't be skin to skin. She said she was always covered. So she said that it would take her years to feel good in her own body. And that was really hard for her because she had been so confident when she got married. So she said she really lost herself in those first few years. I feel like just in what I've seen from other content creators, like people are just kind of jamming through the book. And here I am just starting chapter 7. There is so much in these first 6 chapters. And when you stop and really break it down and talk about it, this is like the initiation process. This is they are laying out all of the abuse, all of the toxic, just like all of the crazy. And so it feels to me like she's being just set up for a world of hurt. And everything is a certain way, and then they get married and everything goes completely different. So she has this great relationship with Cody. They're friends, and she's got a relationship with Mary and Cody. And then the two of them marry Janelle without, saying anything to her. And then her and Cody get married, and just all this fighting. And then obviously he's kind to her. Obviously, they have a relationship enough that her parents are good with her marrying him, that they would have picked this. And then she marries him, and nothing is what it seems. Nothing is what she has been led up to believe it's going to be. So to me, I just think that is just a huge red flag for what I would consider an abusive relationship. So it's like she has been love bombed and, just schmoozed into being in this relationship. And then as soon as they're married and she's locked in, then boom, that's it. Like, he doesn't need to impress her anymore. He doesn't need to put any more thought or time or attention, right? Like, he's landed himself in Allred. He's got this royal blood. And once you're married, you're married. Like, these guys are young. They're starting out this life together. This is what they've been indoctrinated to believe. And so that's it. They're in it. And there's not really anything else that he needs to do after this. Okay, so chapter 7 is called She Was Hurt, I Was Hurt. So she says that Janelle had Logan 2 months after she married Cody. So Logan is the first brown baby. And so she thought that was why her and Cody didn't have a honeymoon phase, because Janelle had Logan, so quickly. But she talks about how much she loved being there for Logan's birth and how much she loved supporting Janelle afterwards, and how there's nothing better than the smell of tiny feet and the burbles of a new baby. She said the kids were where she found her true love. She said every single one of them she just loved. And I remember, like, some of my most prominent memories as a child were like the women getting together supporting the women. So I remember when my mom had babies, and I remember the, sister wives coming over. I remember my dad's sisters coming over to see my mom. I remember, all of the babies were born at home. And so I remember, meals being fixed and different herbal tinctures being brought over. And there was always grape juice when a baby was born. And so I can totally see how here Christine is not really feeling like she fits in anywhere in this family. She comes into this dynamic that is just so explosive. And then 2 months later, Janelle has this baby. And of course, she's going to bond with this baby. She's just going to fall right in love with Logan. And that is going to be where she finds her place, where she fits in, because as long as you're being kind to a child and you're loving on them, they're going to reciprocate that love. And so, if she's being loving towards Cody and he's not reciprocating that, or she's being loving towards her sister wives and they're not reciprocating that, she finds that in the kids find that in her, then that's where she's going to put her energy, her time. That's where she's really going to concentrate on things. So then she talks about, and I find this really interesting, she talks about how she took on her children's personality while she was pregnant with them. So she talks about when she got pregnant with Aspen, and she was newly married. She was really excited about being pregnant, and she was oddly reasonable, she says. So not like herself exactly, but very much like Aspen is today. And she said even with Aspen, she lost 30 pounds. She had been heavier when she got pregnant, but that Aspen grew fine. And so it wasn't like an unhealthy loss of 30 pounds. Again, here's another part that leads me to believe Cody has a personality disorder, and that is that after she got pregnant, Cody went wedding ring shopping because he wanted to make sure she had his ring before her first prenatal appointment with Aspen. He had given her the Claddagh ring for their engagement, but no gold band on their wedding day, which she said she was a bit bummed that she didn't get to go pick out the ring with him. But not like pouty bummed, but I like the story bummed. The having a good day and choosing something special together piece of the story. But he picked out a beautiful ring with a diamond in it. He wanted to make sure that she had a ring before her first appointment. He wanted to make sure that people knew that she was married. So she had planned to have Aspen in her grandma's house in Utah. In that culture, women have their babies at home with a midwife. So she said they don't have them at the hospital because, this man shows up every couple months with a new woman having a baby. And the staff is like, weren't you just here a couple months ago with your other wife? She says that polygamists have always feared putting the father's name down on the birth certificate because it could serve as proof of bigamy in a lawsuit. But she said Cody would sign his name on each and every one of our kids' birth certificates. It was important to him to be the dad. Sometimes in this culture, people don't even get their kids' birth certificates. I don't think that my mom got my birth certificate until I was 5. And I can see a couple of reasons for that. I was her 5th child. So here she is, 5 kids. She is working her ass off to, be able to support these 5 kids. I think up to that point, my dad was giving her $150, $200 a month, and she was having to independently make up the difference. We didn't all live in the same house. Most of my dad's wives had their own homes. There were times that we did live together. We did move in with another sister wife. She was my dad's favorite. We lived with her for 2 or 3 years, I think. And it was really toxic, really explosive. There was 15 of us kids and then those 3 adults. And her kids were so spoiled and could do no wrong. I could tell story after story of us kids, me and my brother that was my same age. We could be doing something and we could be doing the exact same something, and she would whoop my ass and send him to a different room. Like, she would never spank her kids, but she would beat the shit out of my mom's kids. Like, I watched her break spoons over my older brothers. And I watched her be so mean to my little siblings. And there was one time that she was really going after like two of my little sisters who were doing the exact same thing as our two brothers, her two boys. But she just like went after my little sisters and then didn't reprimand her boys at all. And I was like, you are such a bitch. And she grabbed me by my hair. She dragged me out of the living room, dragged me all the way down the hallway into her bedroom, gave me just this tongue lashing, pulled out the Bible and the Book of Mormon, read me all of these verses, showed me where it says in both, you will honor thy father and thy mother. And then she made me write, I think it was like 300 times. I mean, I filled up paper after paper after paper. I will honor thy father and mother. I will honor thy father and mother. And the whole time I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, but you're not my mother, bitch. I wish my mother would come home. She didn't really work outside of the house. And so, but my mom did. My mom worked like 2 or 3 jobs. And so I do remember spending a lot of time with her. I had a brother that was just like 6 or 7 weeks older than I was. And so he and I were really, really close most of our lives. So she talks about how independence was hardwired into us. You know, even if Cody worked a 9 to 5 job, he couldn't attend all 3 of them at once. So she was pregnant with Aspen. She was going to have Aspen at her grandmother's house in Utah. They're living in Wyoming. So she's driving back and forth from Wyoming to Utah to do all of her prenatal appointments. And so she says that when it was time, Cody came to Utah and joined her at her grandma's house. She said that their usual midwife couldn't make it because her sister was in labor. So she sent her assistant. And it was Christine's first baby and Cody's first home birth. Logan had been born in the hospital. Christine was having Aspen at home. She says her grandma had assisted with a few births, but her mom had helped with dozens of births and she didn't want her mom to be there, which seems so crazy to me, but I understand this story especially because of how it ends. So she said that her mom had made her wedding dress, but her mom wasn't allowed to come to the ceremony because she wasn't a church member anymore. And those ceremonies are private, special, only people that are part of the church can be there. So she said that her and her mom were okay together, but they were uncomfortable around each other. And she still felt so angry at her mom. And she didn't see her as part of her community because she had left the church and left her dad. And I'm sure that Christine also felt abandoned. So she talks about how she had left the church and her dad. I'm sure Christine also felt like her mom had left her. So I'm sure that there's some of that resentment in there. So she's having the baby at home. She says the birth doesn't go well. Her hips aren't lining up. So she walked and walked and walked, but her hips wouldn't cooperate, which just hurts. So she's in labor. She's in a ton of pain. And so she thinks that, you know, her hips not lining up were the reason that it was harder for her to have the baby. But she does say that Cody is incredible in the birthing room. There's no one she'd rather have there than Cody. So she says she'd have a contraction, she would stop, she would wrap her arms up around Cody's neck, and then she would just drop her body. So generally you would do that. You would put your arms up around your husband and you would just kind of drop into him. So it would really take the weight off of your belly and your lower back. And then Cody would hold on to her hips. He would hold her up, hold on to her hips and sway her side to side. So that would help her hips to relax and to spread in the way that they needed to for the baby to come. So she knew that her grandma had been making calls all the time, like through her whole labor, but she didn't know who she was calling. Well, she was calling Christine's mom. So she says her grandma didn't know what to do for her. She says, "Can you help?" She had struggled through Aspen's birth for 11 hours. And so she says, Mom told Grandma how to help ease my pain and realign my hips. And she says, I can't imagine what that was like for her. She quietly assisted, knowing that I couldn't be close with her yet, knowing that I didn't want her there for the birth of her grandchild. And that's so hard. I made that same decision with my mom once, and looking back, I wish so badly that I wouldn't have. She says after the baby was born, I called my mom. She showed up the next day. When I saw her, I realized how much I needed her. That day, my heart could have broken from need. I'm sure hers did the day before. As soon as she arrived, I relaxed. She took Aspen and I slept. You don't sleep until someone you trust holds that baby. So that part obviously just really got me. I didn't give birth to my oldest daughter. I became her mom when she was 4, and she's 30 years old now, and she has my first grandson. He's 4 years old. So I fell super in love with her, and I can absolutely understand how these women talk about just the way that they love these children, whether they birthed them or they didn't, because I didn't birth my oldest, and my love for her isn't any different than it is for her sisters. And so with my first one, I gave birth to her at home, and I wanted, obviously, for her birth to be special. I was living in a rental house, and so my ex-husband and I decided that I would have her at my mom's because we knew that that was going to be a family home for a long time, and that we were just living in this rental for a year, basically. So I had her at home, and I remember getting all the way, I was fully dilated, fully effaced, and I remember thinking, wow, my sisters are such assholes. This does not hurt like they described to me this was going to hurt. Well, my water hadn't broken yet, and the midwife decided not to break it because she felt like it was helping to bring the baby down the birth canal. And so she had me sit in a birthing chair, and then she ended up popping my water, and it was like 0 to 100 in 5 seconds. It went from totally like I could breathe it through the contractions. I couldn't speak or anything through them. I mean, the contractions, like, you got to concentrate through those. I remember just like totally thinking, like, this is not as bad as I have been told that it's going to be. And then she breaks my water, and I am in the most horrendous pain I have ever felt in my life. And I don't know why it's like a thing to just totally go into yourself and to not make any noise while you're having a baby. I don't know. That was just like something that we were raised, the stories that were told to us when we were younger. And so I remember really just like trying to focus and breathe. And then the midwife said, maybe we should put you in the bath. Maybe that will, help your body to really relax and help the baby to come, because she, up to this point, just wasn't really coming out. And so I got in the bath, and at that moment, just before the midwife had said that, I remember thinking to myself, God, I wish I could get in the shower right now. I'm such a water soother. If I'm upset, sick, anything, I just want to get in the shower or sit in the bath. Not sit in the bath, but like turn the shower on and sit in the bathtub, or lay down in the bathtub or whatever. And so I ended up getting in the bathtub, and I wouldn't get out. They kept trying to get me to get out and get back in the bed so I could have her in the bed, and I wouldn't do it. I kept telling them no. So I ended up having her in the bathtub, and the midwife's like, I need you to get in the bed. And I'm like, there's no way I'm getting out of this bathtub. So you can get in here with me if you want, but I'm not getting out. And I had her in the bathtub, and it was 9 hours start to finish. Wasn't anything really crazy, but she did have a short cord. And so I would push and push and push, and she would start to come out. And then as soon as my contraction would stop, she would go back in. And so it was like yo, 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 yo. And finally, when it came time for her, like when things were serious, she was about to come out. And it was so funny. I don't know how many of you remember the Gerber baby commercials, but the Gerber baby has just like this mohawk of hair. And that's how my baby was. So as she's coming out in the water, she's got like 2 inches of hair and it's, you know, just floating around her head in the water. And then after she was born and, you know, the next day after that, we realized that her hair, like the top, that whole top mohawk of hair just went into one big curl. And it was so cute. She was so cute. So I had my mom there. I had my mother-in-law there. I have 2 older sisters, and one sister that's younger than her from my mom. I had older sisters not from my mom. And then I have a younger sister I have 4 sisters that are younger than me, but 3 that come right after me. So like I was born in 82, the next one 85, the next one 87, the next one 89, and then a little brother in 91, and then 2 more after that. And so the sister that was just after me, I had her in the room also. And I absolutely loved having my sisters and my mom there. Well, when I was pregnant the second time and it came down to having that daughter, my mom was going through a really hard time. Things were really, really hard between her and my dad. They were really, really stressful. There was just some really tough things that were happening at that time. And I didn't think that I could do life without my mom. And I didn't understand how my mom couldn't, like, I was about to have a baby. Everything, like the focus needed to be about me. And unfortunately for me at that time, it wasn't. My mom had some really hard emotional, personal things that she was dealing with. And so I didn't have her there for the birth. And looking back, I think it was because I was really trying to protect myself emotionally and I was young and didn't have the room for my mom's emotions. And so I didn't have her there. I didn't have my 2 older sisters there. I had another older sister from a different mom, actually from my dad's first wife there, and my mother-in-law and one of my dad's younger sisters. And then my oldest daughter I think she was 9 at this point, and so we let her be there. But my midwife had passed away when my first biological daughter was born. So my baby was 9 months old when my midwife had passed away. And so with the second birth, I was at such a loss. I was terrified. Like I did not know how I was going to give birth to this baby without that midwife. I don't know how these women do it, but so I went back and forth on whether or not to have her with a midwife at home, to have her at a birthing center, and ultimately I chose to have her at the hospital. There was 2 doctors in the AUB that were delivering babies. They were actual doctors. And there was a midwife who went through a nursing school. I think she became like a licensed nurse practitioner, and she came and helped me as almost like a doula. And then I had one of the doctors, you know, from the AUB deliver, and I just delivered at one of the local hospitals here. And so I remember though feeling like I didn't have the same issues with my mom like Christine is talking about with her mom in this book. It's just that my mom and I weren't super close, and it had just been a really short period of time. But as soon as I had my daughter, I remember just like, I need to call my mom. And prior to her being born, I was okay with my mom not being there. And then as soon as she was born, like I wanted my mom. I needed my mom. And of course, I think I called her or I texted her. I think she came and dropped off one of my little sisters, and I just said, "Mom, please, will you come in?" And so I remember her coming and sitting there and holding the baby and just feeling so much peace once my mom was there. You know, so when Christine says you don't sleep until someone you trust
holds the baby. Like that just, I remember my mom sitting there holding my baby and just feeling so much peace and, feeling just safe in that moment because she was there. So I look at this dynamic though, and I just think about how this cult and this doctrine and the things that these people are being fed, kept Christine and her mom from having that experience. This is Christine's first baby. And she is angry at her mom because her mom makes the choice that this lifestyle isn't for her. That breaks my heart. Again, I feel like there's so much psychological, mental, emotional abuse and the mental gymnastics that you have to do in order to be in this cult, in this religion. It's sickening and it's sad and you can see the devastation, the way that it just breaks up and separates families, and the way that people behave, the way that these men behave, that they can just put on this public persona, this like, I'm a great dad, I'm a family man, whatever, and then behind the scenes they're picking favorites and they're disowning kids, and they're like, how do you just walk away from 3 wives and 15 children? Like, how do you do that? And as a child, I understand that devastation. So I look at all of the Brown kids and my heart hurts so much for them because I understand that pain of having a deadbeat dad. When that dad can choose to go to a church meeting or whatever he deems as more important than to show up for his children, even when they're adults. Everybody that has a relationship with their parents knows how important your relationship with your parents are. So watching these last couple seasons of Sister Wives has really just been so hard. And as things have played out on the screen, those same things have been playing out with my family. And so I've had so many conversations with my mom, and I'm like, Mom, this is like a carbon copy of Cody is behaving like a carbon copy of the way Dad is behaving. And why is that? Cody and Dad don't even really, like, Cody's not on the council. He's been out of the church for so long. Like, these two aren't even, in acquaintance with each other anymore. And yet Cody's behavior is identical to Dad's behavior. So make that make sense, right? There's something in the way that they're being taught, or I don't know, just, yeah, this book definitely, I just like absorbed it. I just read it so fast the first time. And now as I'm going back and reading and taking notes and, kind of getting prepared to talk about things on these videos, I've gotten the opportunity to process through a lot of emotions and really think about a lot of different situations and circumstances. And that's good for me. Like, this is healing for me. Talking about these things and exposing some of this darkness. And I'm a verbal processor, so I feel better once I talk about it and I cry about it and get those emotions out. And so this has been really healing for me. Doing all of the different interviews that I've done has been really healing for me. And so I'm excited, to kind of dissect these chapters of this book. And then, Sister Wives is going to be out at the end of the month, season 20. And so just to really kind of start to break down the episodes and stuff, I think it's great. Melanie and I grew up obviously in the same home, and yet we have such different perspectives on so many things and so many similar perspectives on so many things. She's the oldest of our mom's 11 kids. I'm the 5th of the 11 kids. And she played that mother figure to me for a lot of my childhood because she was 8 years older than I was. So by the time I was born, she was hands-on parenting at that point. By the time I was 8, I was babysitting 3 little kids, my 3 younger sisters. And so that parentification, we got a lot of similarities in that way. And yet, obviously, I'll never fully know what it feels like to be the oldest child and to go through the different things that she went through. and then she'll never fully know what it was like to be stuck at home when she left and taking over those responsibilities. And but there's enough obviously that we can relate and talk about things and joke about things. Melanie and I have always had a really good relationship, and sometimes we throw down and we, want to choke the shit out of each other, and the majority of the time we have a great time together and we get along really well and we laugh about a lot of the same things, and I just absolutely adore her. I cannot imagine doing life without her. So that aspect of this is a lot of fun too, to really have, this in common, and just to be able to go spend time with, her and Corey and do, lives with them like that. I've had a ton of fun doing that. So I'm really excited to keep doing this, and I'm super grateful that you guys are finding some, enjoyment in my content, and we'll just kind of get to see where this goes together. But I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate all of your comments. I think there's so many, awesome, thought-provoking and thoughtful things being said. I've gotten a few emails from people that I have just thoroughly enjoyed. One of my really, really, really good friends of 21 years, she helped me in a hard time in my life. I helped her in a hard time in her life. We have connected on so many things. She sent me an email and I just burst into tears when I opened my email inbox and I saw her email in there. Her kids and I grew up together. She's actually closer to my mom's age and was friends with my mom and one of the other moms. And so we just have this really cool connection. And she happened to see my first video and sent me that email. And so things will just come full circle, and it is going to be really interesting just to see kind of where things go with the Browns, and to see where things go with my dad and being the prophet and the AUB, and just to see what cool healing experiences come for me and hopefully for others in my life. It's been a ton of fun to see the different aha moments that Melanie has had and even that Corey has had. And so just to see a lot of light be brought into such a dark experience and a dark life. And I'm all about processing through healing from that abuse, getting, I don't think with healing you ever forget. I think as you heal through things, the memory of those things becomes less painful, and it's freeing in a way. It takes that weight off of your chest and it really opens up the door for a lot more fun and enjoyment in life. So it's a good process, and I'm so excited to do it with all of you. I hope that even though you haven't lived polygamy, for those of you that haven't lived polygamy, I hope that there's still some things in these stories that you can relate to, and maybe you can find some healing in whatever it is that you relate to. That is my hope for each and every one of you. So thanks for being here. Thanks for watching, guys.